Okay, excellent. Okay, so let's get started. So thank you very much, Michelle, for the introduction. If we can move to the next slide. Okay, so for any of you who can't see me, this is me sitting in my kitchen where I'm usually working these days, like I'm sure a lot of you may be, or in a home office and that sort of thing. I have been for the last 6 months working on a new venture, which I've just launched last month, which is called Forte Lux. So this is a business which is actually helping retailers, luxury retailers specifically, to offload aged inventory as a result of the COVID moment or experience. And so far it's going really well. So I'm maintaining my consulting at the same time. I'm super happy to be a new member of the AFA Association. And I'm really happy to be connecting with all of you today to share some ideas. So I'm going to go through, I have a whole bunch of information and slides, and we're going to cover a few business concepts and ideas for intuitive business leadership, which I think is something that can be, we're all experiencing a lot of flux and a lot of change. So it should be hopefully insightful and reinforce some of the things that you're naturally practicing in your business as a result of 2020. So if we can move to the next slide. Please. Thank you. Okay, so as a trend forecaster, somebody who's a specialist in trend, one of the things that we're always looking at is time frames. So very interestingly, we've seen, based on the global pandemic, a lot of the talking points of what we're going to cover this morning, we're looking at a snapshot in time. So the snapshot or the pinpoint of time that I want to focus on is from a baseline of initial lockdown within Canada, which we can relatively say across the provinces by St. Patrick's Day or March 17th. And then if we fast forward to today, we're looking at 7 months and 4 days since the initial lockdown. During this time, it's been a time of rapid change and adjustment and everything. And so what I'd like to do is start off by looking at this from 3 different perspectives, from the perspective of what's going on with the consumer, what's happening in the market, and then also what's happening from the perspective of business to give us sort of a basis for what the strategies that we're going to talk about. So if we start off, next slide, by looking at the perspective of what has happened to the consumer over this time frame. Okay, so if we look at the starting point, at first we had awareness in the media that there was going to be some significant changes to our lifestyle, our emotional impacts, consumer behavior habits, and just everything that would happen in the consumer's life. So there was awareness, then we moved through a system of shock and confusion. And then obviously all the while having to make rapid lifestyle and behavioral adjustments, a lot of staying at home, less interaction with others, isolation, quarantine. So all of these new sort of processes that, the average Canadian consumer may not have lived through in their lifetime at any point. When I think about the Canadian consumer journey of 2020 in a nutshell, I sort of think of it as the pathway that you would find in a boomerang if you were throwing it for the first time. So I don't know if you've ever thrown a boomerang before, but I mean, if you're really good at it, it'll come right back to you. But we're sort of in a system where this boomerang has been thrown, or we've been thrown ourselves a curveball, if you will, and it's not necessarily going to land in exactly the same spot as we anticipated to. So I think that the biggest shift or cultural shift that we're going to experience with the Canadian consumers is this reassessment of needs and wants. What do we actually need in our life, and what do we actually want in our life? And then that's going to have a huge long-term effect or macro effect on what people purchase, how they spend their money, how they save their money, and how they participate in their lifestyle through the products that they're going to acquire and use. One of the biggest reviews that I think most Canadian consumers have gone through is factoring in the usability of the products of their life, and then realizing that they have different needs or different wants based on pre-COVID experiences. So I would say at a midpoint, we've all, settled, the Canadian consumer settled into new habits. And right now we are really experiencing a moment of acceptance and adaptation to long-term changes. So essentially, in any crisis situation, a consumer is hitting an adjustment point normally after about 6 months, where it's developing permanence or new permanence in habits. So we can definitely expect that a lot of the changes that we've experienced in business or as individuals over the last 6 months, from now going forward is when we're really going to start to experience the permanence of those changes. And of course, the biggest question that everyone has is, when is this going to end, and what is the future going to look like? And I think that those are still big question marks, whether you're somebody who's studying insights all the time or just an average citizen who is shopping for yourself. It's a big question mark for everyone. So let's move on to the market. So next slide, please. I think we may have gone past. Oh, well, actually, I can cover this one. Okay, so if we go to just go back to that one, please. All right, so as an example, one of the things that I'm normally looking at when considering retail is mobility reports from Google. So this is actually Google's tracking of devices based on location. So this one, keep in mind, baseline or the baseline comparison of these figures is actually pre-COVID, so January 2020. So again, we're still looking at a snapshot of very, very recent consumer activity. So on average, with the month of with the last 5 weeks, we're still seeing retail and recreation, including shopping activities, as across Canada down by 22%. If you happen to be based in a rural area where there would be less tracking or less activity on Google, keep in mind that these figures may not be entirely relative to you. They may be more relative in an urban sense. Workplace activities, workplace trips, need for anything workplace related outside of the home, down 33%, which is still a significant amount. And then as well, national parks, beaches, outdoor public spaces up 29%. So as we can see, across the board for Canadian consumers, we have some pretty significant, longer term adjustments potentially in the products that are needed for clothing and footwear based on changes in activity. So this is just a snapshot for Canada. It's really just an overview, but seeing that, for instance, if we were considering footwear, if we had a footwear assortment, knowing that we're about 30% up on our outdoor activity and 30% down on workplace appropriate footwear. Certainly, using this kind of data can give us a snapshot to how we can, make better decisions to drive business for the consumer based on their direct needs with the most recent information. Okay, so let's move on to the market. Next slide, please. Okay, so in the Canadian market, from my perspective, I have many clients across Canada this year, this season, last season, who've actually folded or gone out of business, or in the process of bankruptcy, winding up businesses. And I would say that they're all sizes across the market. I don't see any trend across the board that happens to be small business, medium-sized enterprise, or large corporations. It's been pretty significant across the board. So in my opinion, we can sort of bucket most entities in the market or consumer products brands in 3 different categories. And even if you're not in one of these stages at the moment, it's not to say that by the end of the pandemic or over the next 1.5 to 2 years or even 5 years, as a result of this event, you could end up in any one of these areas. The first one is in demise. So obviously, you could mention that it's possibly victim to market correction, or companies or brands that were unstable before the global pandemic hit, and then have taken a dive and based on that. and then will survive. So companies that are managing to survive by unique means, and then also ones that are set to thrive. So we're already thriving pre-pandemic, have taken great strategies and great steps to combat the business changes that we've experienced, and are seemingly going to recover and thrive based on the opportunities that are presented now. So the best question, I think, is to ask yourself, perhaps, where is my business at the moment? Am I in one of these categories, or do I see myself outside of these categories? And what can I do to position myself, or how can I position myself in a category that I'm aiming for, or that I prefer, or that I want to avoid? And so thinking in these terms: is my business going to be in demise? Is it going to be survival mode, and I'm going to come out no better or no less? Or do I want to set myself up through the best processes that I can, with the best concepts and creativity that I can, in order to thrive from this experience? Okay, next, let's take a look at business. So for most of the businesses that I encounter today in all of my communications, we see, I feel like the best analogy for what I hear from most business owners, whether it's in the wholesale side of things, the retail side of things, from brands, is that it's really a bit like a teeter-totter. And I think that that's also reflective of how the consumer has felt in the past. And so maybe the adjustment with businesses is set to, the adjustment to settling with this is going to continue. It's going to be a bit longer than for the consumer, who is adapting a little bit faster. But certainly some of the impressions that I get in communicating with people in business right now is certainly the biggest factor is the uncertainty. A lot of fear mongering, whether that is from current media, or medical reports that are coming out, and creating a more fear factoring, driving decision making, which can be harmful, because we should always try and uncover the facts. Media hype, just in general, I think that the Canadian consumer has become a lot more in tune to media in the last 6 or 8 months than probably ever before. And then also just like vulnerability for what's going to happen if there's another lockdown, and how are we going to survive the future of several waves of more changes in business that that can affect us. And then on the other side of things, I hear a lot of great wins and a lot of great stories from business owners where they're making creative decisions and following their own intuition in business, or they're discovering new facts about their consumers and finding new niches even within their own customer base, to be able to serve or sell new products. I mean, I think that most businesses who have moved to selling masks have found new connectivity with their current customers. There's a lot of opportunity out there, and then just building resilience for business as well. So finding new routes to creating downturn proofing of your business when we have loss of opportunities to connect with our consumers, and new ways to sort of bridge relationships with these consumers as well. So certainly based on the last 6 months, we've seen a lot of teetering between these two sort of worlds. And I think that the goal of most businesses that I hear is about finding new stability, or a new sense of stability for their business going forward. So let's talk about, if you can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So let's just talk about some ideas that we can have for business concepts, looking at what could be the actual next normal for the Canadian apparel and retail and footwear landscape. So a couple of the ideas that I just wanted to cover today were digital acceleration, which I'm sure many of you are already participating in. The concept of value and values, the difference between the two, and what sort of combination is going to bring strength to business and in the relationship with the consumers. Looking at how to deal with the data deficiency and changing from the concept of sort of data deficiency to efficiency, and also thinking how can we instill creativity with our business and with our brand, and how we're outward facing to consumers during the crisis that we have at the moment. So let's move on to talk about digital acceleration. Can we have the next slide, please? Thank you. So one of the most interesting things that I've noticed in all of the networking that I've done and all of the business that I've done over the last 6 months is that certainly, Canadian businesses are making a bigger, stronger push to move to digital. This is, of course, a long-term trend, which has been happening for some time. But then I find that Canadian business owners and the retail side tend to be slower adopters of technology, for instance, than other cultures per se. Certainly in the US, it's much more rapid absorption of these trends. And so, of course, as soon as everyone experienced the initial lockdown, oh my goodness, is my online store performing? Do I need an online store? And then the race to actually create those technological assets and to be able to connect with consumers sort of like started at that point. If you were a small to medium sized brand and did not have, who is engaging in wholesale, and then did not, for instance, have good connectivity for direct to consumer sales, there was a race to, oh my goodness, now I need to sell directly because, the retail stores that I supply are all, closed. And so there was a bit of a panic in this sort of like race to digital. The thing that I'm noticing amongst Canadian businesses is not that they are doing the wrong things by opening an online store or investing in, investing more heavily in social media. The issue is that it's a bit too little and possibly too late. So I would say that right now, in my experience with most retailers and brands, a healthy strategy for your sales performance will be a minimum of 30% of all of your sales in digital. If you want to be accelerating, if you want to be accelerating in digital and like really something that would be matching, I think that would be more relative to matching the market, is closer to 50% of all of your sales in digital. I think that also this is going to be a longer term trend that is going to stick. So if you're not already at those sort of metrics, those are things that you could build into your goals of how to sort of like grow your business. So essentially, the interesting thing about that as well is that I find that the average Canadian business owner tends to be more conservative about making the investment into digital, and I think this is really a market and a time now where we need to embrace what is the long-term change of digital acceleration, that our Canadian consumers are really preferring to shop online. Clothing and footwear represents 62% right now, as a figure by Canada Post, of items that are bought online. So overwhelmingly, over 50% of the products that Canadian consumers who are shopping online are buying clothing and footwear. So if you're not already capitalizing on this aspect of digital, of being able to connect with consumers and sell this way, then it's a good idea to work on pivoting your business. Another aspect which I find is somewhat undervalued, and could be valued more by the average Canadian business, is internal digital transformation. So external meaning customer facing or sales channels. So that's the one aspect. And then the other aspect is actually the internal digital revolution. So if we move to the next slide. So if we move to the next slide, I think that the main sort of tenet that I would like to express is to be loyal to your bottom line above all. This is really hard for some people who have been in business for years and have worked for, or worked with partners who have helped them to grow their business in the long term. But unprecedented times truly call for unprecedented measures. And there are many, many efficiencies to be found in the digital world based on this acceleration that we've experienced over the last 6 or 8 months. And when I say internal practices, that could be any processes that you have in your back end that you can outsource digitally that were previously done by internal employees who are no longer with you. Those kind of things. There are tremendous opportunities out there to take advantage of a trans-global talent pool as well. Now we're really living in a moment where you can really hire the best person for the job, regardless of their location. We're moving to a virtual world of working. And these are all bonuses for all people working in business at the moment. So really embracing the globalization. So thinking about all of your internal and external strategies from both the perspective of what is working for me locally and globally, and then also the internal and the external. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples here of different services or companies that would be relative to the internal side of capitalizing on this digital acceleration. So let's just move through the next slide. Okay, so this one is, I don't know if anyone out there has tried this service or heard of it yet, but it's called Good Lawyer. This is a service, it's sort of like Airbnb for lawyers. You can find lawyers in most provinces across Canada, and they will review documents for you. They can provide advice. You can book sessions with them online. You have a choice of the lawyer that you use. I can't say enough about how quick and efficient this service is and how low cost. I would say the average savings in using Good Lawyer could be up to 90% of regular fees with lawyers here in Vancouver, so where I'm based. So as an example for review of a document, like if you had a sales agreement or you wanted to change your terms based on getting into e-commerce or building or developing e-commerce, a lot of people are reviewing privacy policies at the moment, those kind of things. With increasing our activity in different areas, normally we need more services or different services based on how we've transacted our business. And so I believe they charge $25 a page. The last documents that I had reviewed on Good Lawyer was returned to me in less than 24 hours. Consultation session is $40, and you can normally have someone serve you same day. So I mean, I think that the typical route for business owners to source and use a lawyer, it's normally taking a lot more time and not necessarily as efficient. So there's definitely cost savings and efficiency to be had with services like this one. Okay, next. This is another one, Chit Chats. So I actually use Chit Chats for shipping services, or I'm a new client of theirs, a new customer of theirs. Their claim to fame is saying up to 74% less on shipping, cross-border shipping, and shipping within Canada as well. So anyone who's looking to save money on transporting, or even for e-commerce solutions to save money on shipping, which of course is one of, the biggest costs when you're used to having the overhead of retail and then, like, for instance, growing your e-commerce business, saving money on the shipping aspect, especially with free returns, is a huge concern because that cuts heavily into margin. So I highly recommend Chit Chats as a possibility for being able to save money on shipping. Okay, next. So this one is really interesting. This one is Acadium. So Acadium is actually a service which is based out of Toronto, but they have digital marketing apprentices. So it's very easy for most businesses to say to most businesses, oh, we should all be doing so much more work in digital and like increasing digital at a at a huge rate. But then, of course, it takes manpower, talent, and also savvy in order to grow our digital business through many different aspects. So Acadium has a very unique service whereby you can sign up for a monthly membership or an annual membership and have a host of apprentices for digital marketing. These are normally people who are studying in marketing, and then they're able to support your business through, for instance, a weekly meeting, and then will assist your business with all sorts of aspects of growth. They have specialties in industry, in various aspects of the industry, and many industries, and it's an incredible value. I believe you can have up to 12 apprentices over the course of a year for the cost of $1,200. So I don't know, I mean, as an example for anyone who's set up an e-commerce store recently, I would say that the going rate in Vancouver for setting up, for instance, if you're growing into an online store or growing aspects of your online business, minimum fees are going to be in the range of sort of $5,000 to $10,000 for web development. So possibly, if you need to bootstrap some of these aspects of your business, then you can use services like these in order to get the manpower and the talent that you need. As well, you're not obligated to hire. There's talent from all over the world here. So if you notice that your digital business is growing, or your customer base in the online realm is growing in other parts of the world, you can even hire people from those locales. Okay, next. So I just wanted to highlight two major social media management platforms. So obviously with this digital acceleration, we really do need to manage our voice or our brand in the public sphere very carefully. And that's one of the biggest concerns that a lot of businesses have when they realize they have to create deepen their brand value in the online, in the online and digital world. So Later is actually an Instagram scheduling and managing platform. And I highly recommend them for anyone who has a business where it tends to be more influencer-based content. I find that it's very much, it's very youthful and fun as a platform to use to express on Instagram. It's very simple. So I would recommend that one. For retail stores, I would say, and they're incredibly low cost as well. The next one that I wanted to highlight, if you go to the next slide, is actually called Plan. And Plan is one that seems to be very popular with retail stores. So if you're currently not content calendaring and scheduling your content and planning ahead, these are incredible tools to help you sort of manage the process with an internal team. As well, I think that Plan is just, it's very simple to use. And if you're not already using these kinds of tools, it's a great time to make this investment for your team. So I would say Later and Plan happen to be my top two favorites. Okay, let's move on. So that's focusing on some tools for digital acceleration. So next. Okay, so now I'd like to talk about value and values. So truly we're in a moment when we can all admit that the reevaluation is here, where consumers are looking at what do they actually value in the world of products, and how does it actually reflect their values. And I would say that these two factors are not necessarily mutually exclusive. So we have to really consider both of these aspects as a combination. I think another thing that I notice a lot with the businesses in Canada right now in our sector is that, people are sort of, this is a great opportunity where we have a clean slate and we can sort of say, do we need to reposition ourselves? Do we need to, look at what were our core values when we started this business, and how have those evolved over time? Do we want to take ourselves back to our roots in this moment? Is that going to be disruptive to our audience and our brand base? Or do we have new parameters that we are looking to inject that are actually going to mirror or reflect the desires of our largest consumer base coming, which is going to be Gen Z? sales to Gen Z consumers, so anyone born from 1995 onward, is already in the range of two and a half trillion globally. So we have to consider this consumer group carefully, and then also look at how even older consumers or more experienced consumers like Gen X and baby boomers are adapting to the technology, and then also adapting their moving with the times. So if we go on to the next slide. So if we just want to make a quick snapshot comparison of some of the shifts that have taken place since the 2000s, or in the last 20 years, and looking at the generational differences between Gen X, millennial, and sort of newer consumers, Gen Z and beyond, who are going to have this spending power, there's a huge cultural shift happening in what the consumer actually values as most important and least important. Gen Z and beyond are truly, truly, truly driven by price overall, but they're also very concerned about value. So where we saw in the 2000s, people were very brand driven, logo driven, more susceptible to adoption of trends. We are now having younger consumer who is truly driven by price and value, and very concerned about the ethics behind the products and the brands that they're going to buy and absorb and wear. So as you can see, on this particular matrix, we sort of have a flip of the needs and wants, but they're not directly relative either, because it's not that they've entirely changed. It's not to say that consumers now are not loyal to brands or particular trends or styles. It's just that there's more loyalty happening with price and the value of the product over remaining attached to brand. So let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so here, if we take a look at what we're looking at as important in this sort of like post-pandemic space, and with a new consumer mentality, certainly we're looking for a balance or a marriage between the different aspects that we see here. So value meaning price, value also meaning longevity of the style. So when we say longevity of the styles, you could say more minimal or more classic. So we definitely have tastes that are, we have consumers now who are making investments in products and then thinking about the long-term value of that item. A great example of a Canadian product that is winning with this strategy would be like a Canada Goose. A Canada Goose jacket is not going to date itself for 5 to 10 years, and a lot of consumers will see it as an investment product. So longevity of styles, but also price. Longevity of the actual products. Does it fall apart or does it stay? So this is or does it last? And this is really the anti-fast fashion movement. So this is really looking at, okay, I want the best price for this product, but I also don't want it to fall apart on me, or I don't want to have to cycle through it, because I understand now that that's wasteful, and it's not a desirable feature of a product anymore. Guarantees are another aspect where we can add value. So guarantees of repair, or guarantees of how long the product is going to last, or guarantees of where the fibers or the content or the manufacturing has been done. From an ethical perspective, all of these things are really important. And then also risk-free purchasing. So when I say risk-free purchasing, I don't just mean returns only. Risk-free purchasing can be, it can be try before you buy. It can be, there's many strategies to be applied here in thinking about how do we reduce the risk of purchasing, especially if we're intending on increasing online sales. We want to mitigate all the risks for the consumer that we possibly can, or are within our business means. So as far as values are concerned, one of the biggest concerns, I think, is consistency. So we saw a lot of businesses during the pandemic start to communicate and experiment in different ways with their consumers, switching to making masks, offering new products and services, trying different things. And I think that the consumer in the long term is actually looking for consistency. So consistency with all of the values in the left-hand column, and then also consistency in offering based on, based on where we're at. Also ethical continuity. If you're touting yourself as carrying sustainable products or building sustainable products, I think that your consumers want to know that that's something that you're committed to in the long term, not just testing out for a season to see if there's any response based on it. So this is another thing that, the younger consumers and the new consumers are going to be looking out for and checking carefully. And actually it is a factor driving the decision making and buying. Of course, authenticity, being true to your perspectives. I think also with a lot of the political events that are happening right now, it's easy to want to participate in conversations online and to actually take a stance. And I've seen a lot of businesses do that successfully. But do keep in mind in all aspects that you want to ensure that you're speaking authentically and truthfully. And with respect for the receiving audience based on your personal values versus the values of your brand or your business. Transparency, so actually being candid about whether it's supply chain or what's happening with your business, truth about your products, all of those sort of factors we're looking for. And then environmental stewardship. So perhaps your business is not a business that is easily able to sell sustainable products or to change processes to be more environmental. But that doesn't mean that you can't create events or opportunities to do fundraising or give back to the community through environmental means. So a great example of a Canadian brand that takes a stance and actually follows through with it entirely is actually 10 Tree. So for every product that they sell or for every dollar value of products that they sell, they end up planting trees within Canada. So, and not all of their products are, necessarily, perfectly good for the environment, but they're doing their best to offset through ways that are meaningful for their consumers. So that's always an option. So this combination of value and values is, I think, one of the most winning strategies for any business, based on where we're at right now. Okay, next slide. So one of the interesting things about the moment that we're living right now is that our data is entirely deficient. We had a blip this past spring where almost all of the data that we would have ran, collected, projected, or forecasted in our businesses became totally irrelevant in a moment. Businesses were shut down. We had no record for, how to proceed or how to take action based on it. And I think that we're still in a moment where, everyone is trying to do projections and forecasting and planning for the year ahead. And it's very, very tremendously difficult. So what can we do about data to build and foster efficiency in the current moment? So let's move to the next slide. So again, I think I just want to reiterate here that we really have a clean slate. So the interesting thing about that is if you're competitive with businesses that have been around for 10, 20, 30 years with your business, right now we have this moment, which is the leveling of the playing field, because you're not the only person who's deficient. We all are. So it's a chance to see that businesses that are better able to use tools like CRM or, have a bigger built out client base or have, more inventory efficiency than you do because they have a greater history of sales, to work off of. We're all sort of, in this together. So the most important thing I would say is to use timeframes wisely. So what that means is that your recent historical data, so 3 to 5 year range, what you might be forecasting off of, or season over season, year over year, is not going to be relevant anymore. I would say that if your business has been around for longer, since the last recession, I would probably look at any figures that you can mine from the 2009 season or year. They might be more reflective of how the wave will affect your business now. So actually looking back to the last sort of crisis time, or what we considered a crisis time in retail, would be more relative. If your business is newer than that, which many of you may be, then I would say using data or information from the last 6 to 8 month range, and then making projections sort of like as a zero start date on the, when we experience lockdown, and looking at, how your business is in flux in much shorter time frames or shorter chunks of time frame. So definitely trying to use that information wisely. So definitely one thing that I notice in Canadian business, especially on the retail side, is that often we are not so concerned about data capture, and data capture is incredibly important in this particular moment. So if your business grew to a level where you stopped doing footfall counts, now is the time to bring that back in. If you have stopped collecting data from when people come in to make a purchase, like for instance, if you're only collecting their name and their email address, or if you have a program where you're only collecting a phone number, it's a time to look at what other information you can glean from your client base in order to stay better connected with them, and to do campaigning to create more data capture, so that we can rebuild what's necessary. Also think non-traditionally and be experimental. I think, with data, what's important right now might be very different than what it was before. So, as an example, I worked inside one business and they collected the birth dates of their client base. So they actually reached out to all of their client base and collected the birth dates, not the year, just the month and the day, and decided to do birthday cards. And based on sending out these birthday cards, they saw a 10% increase in their sales. We're having a moment where we have very low connectivity amongst even family members who are in different parts of the country, or people living, abroad. And so just the fact that they created this positive moment of connection with a consumer, which is unrelated really to shopping activity, but could be, for instance, if somebody wanted to self-gift, or if they received a gift of funds and then decided to spend it on themselves, sending that reminder that, hey, we're still here, and we would, to wish someone's something on a positive life event, builds connectivity. So definitely think about what's important to your consumers and how you can rebuild data in this moment. Useful data. Okay, next. So just another thing to consider as well is looking at the metrics for how we're actually cataloging consumers. I would say that definitely we're in a moment right now where behavioristics, how people actually buy, and patterns, and developing new patterns and habits. Behavioristics, or noting in data the behavior of our clients and how they are shopping from us, is going to be a big factor in driving decision making, or successful decision making. Psychographics, also the mentality of our consumers, customer journey, super important. Things like demographics and geographics right now, with the acceleration that we're experiencing in digital, certainly moving down the list in importance, or as a factor at the moment. Really, the possibilities are limitless for finding new consumers or serving your consumers, as long as you can ship to them and provide them good service. Okay, next. Okay, let's talk about creativity in a crisis. I just have a couple of examples. So next, please. Okay, so I'm sure some of you out there who may supply Levi's or buy Levi's for your businesses are aware of their new recycling program. They actually launched this program in April, so right in amidst the beginning of COVID and everything. So they now have a denim recycling program in their stores. I think that it's a fantastic idea. Looking at ways to build circularity with your consumers now, I think that they're really one of the companies that is leading the way with this. I would even suggest that there's so many opportunities with this circularity to connect with the consumers. Like, for instance, could you host a mending class, or how to fix certain aspects, or I mean, it's limitless. So definitely Levi's is a great example. I'm just going to whip through these because we're probably running low on time now. Next. So this is an example from earlier in the pandemic, Welk's General Store in Vancouver. It's sort of like if you haven't been there, it's a very sort of expensive, fancy, a bit like a dollar store, but with way better stuff, way better brands. And so in the absence of being able to build an online store during the pandemic to be able to serve their customers quickly when they were in lockdown, they actually took photos of all the aisles in their store and then posted it into a Google catalog so that consumers could view the images and either circle what they want and send a photo in and continue to shop from them without they circumvented building, the time and the effort that would be needed to build an online store. So I think it was tremendously creative in their aspect for the amount and the variety of different things that they had to launch a Google Drive that customers could access to continue buying from them. So, there's nothing wrong these days with looking at shortcuts or temporary options to be able to continue activities. And I think that customers, are receptive to that, and we should continue. Okay, next. So this one is in Toronto. So for anyone who's based in Toronto, you may have noticed Steps. Steps is actually an initiative with local artists who are working to beautify through public art retail shopping promenades. So they're painting typically on the streets or on business storefronts and so on to create more, I guess, beauty, you could say, and interest in continuing shopping activities. So I think that this one is a great initiative in Toronto. So they're working with the business associations in each of the shopping neighborhoods in order to execute this. If you're involved with your own local business association, it's great to consider these options, or perhaps you could work with your own business association to come up with some initiatives of this type to keep shoppers engaged and inspired. Next. Okay, and then I think that the 3 points that I would like to complete with are, of course, community. We're all still in this together, whether we're looking at it as a nation or as a small community on your shopping street or within your province. Creativity is key. Keep inspired for yourself, and your clients will be inspired also. And then just also collaboration. This is a great time to reach out and find new business partners and inject new ideas into your business. And I want to say thank you, everyone, for this opportunity to talk to you about some of these ideas. So if we move on to the next. So just a bit of humor at the end. So if anyone would like to ask a question, I think we should open it up as a bit of a forum or discussion. So my question to everyone, if you feel like answering it before speaking, is the Canadian tuxedo, which is one of my favorite looks of all time, who wore it best? Was it Britney Spears and Justin Timberlake, or Riff Raff and Katy Perry more recently? So if there's any questions, I think we should open up for those. You can either type a question, or if you want to use your microphone and.
Hey everyone, If you have any questions for Emily, you can certainly go in and use the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. You can't use your mics, but you can certainly ask questions. Great job, Emily. Very informative.
Thank
Very
you.
informative. Very good presentation. I don't really know who any of these people are on that are on the screen here. Not really.
Okay. Well, it's a lot of information to go through. There's a lot of food for thought there. So I understand if, I know that the AFA is going to be sharing this presentation as well. So you should be
Yes.
welcome to keep a copy as well. And my contact information is there as well. So
Excellent. Excellent.
yeah, so if we have, if anyone, please add me on LinkedIn as well. I'd love to stay connected with everyone, and also I'd love to stay connected through the AFA as well. So
Absolutely, Emily. We will be sending this out. There'll be lots of follow-up. It will be posted on the AFA Canada website and our YouTube channel as well, the presentation, and we'll be following up with your deck, the deck that you sent. So I know we had some technology glitches, but it all went well. So thank you so much,
yes,
Emily. Really
thank you as
appreciate
well. Thanks to
it.
everyone who joined, and have a great day.